Okay, so welcome to our final session, Playschool, week 3. And this is all about entrepreneurs' habits and routines, and really just kind of going into like the operational level of stuff. So, we started with week 1 on self-awareness. Last week, week 2, we focused more on like mindsets. So we focused on a lot of mental tools. And now we're really just going to, for the first time, focus on practical stuff. So I kind of wanted to start with you, Andy. I guess it's more of just like a general question. Would you consider yourself a very habits and routine driven entrepreneur?
Yeah, in person. I'd go beyond the word entrepreneur. I think I'm just naturally a systems thinker. So I naturally think in habits and systems. And when you sent over the questions earlier, like my mind just started racing at the different things that I do that I guess really serve me in my day-to-day of how I navigate the world at home as well as at work. And I think there's an extra layer of complexity sometimes when you're a parent and you're married and you have a baby, which is called a business, and managing the time between the three is always a negotiation, and it forces you to develop habits to prioritize more ruthlessly around, am I focusing on the right things with a lot of time that I have, because I don't have much time. So I need to make sure that I'm working on the right things with the time that I actually do have. So in this conversation, I'm sure we're going to dive into more, but I can give specific things that I do if helpful.
Okay, yeah, I'm going to come on to those in my next question. But Michael, I have the same question for you. You are 8 years into entrepreneurship. I know it was your anniversary recently.
Yep,
8 years as a bootstrap founder, team of 6 now. Are you now versus 8 years ago a habits and routine driven person?
I go in waves. I'm actually by nature quite a disorganized person, and I've basically done that whole let me be like Tim Ferriss and wake up at 5 a.m. and like step by step by step. And I had to kind of be kinder on myself and realize that it's not necessarily real. That ideal doesn't exist. I'm sure even Tim Ferriss doesn't do that. But I've slowly like inculcated a few habits over the years that definitely have served me well. But I just think there can be a culture of like beating yourself up if you don't have that cold shower, followed by that breath work, followed by that, you know what I mean? All of the above.
I like the honesty there, because I feel like I also go through seasons. Now, admittedly, I don't have children, so I'm sure when my responsibilities change, like Andy, I'll probably be a bit more focused on that. But yeah, Andy, I'd love to come back to you. So when you now think back to day one to now, what are these habits or strategies that you wish you had adopted sooner?
I'll mention just 2 or 3 because I don't want the list to get too exhaustive. The first is around time blocking, like recognizing that you are the ultimate steward of your time. And when you say no to people, it's actually really liberating, because it allows you to have the optionality of what to use your time for in the future. Whereas as soon as you say yes to someone, you almost have a social contract or a debt in the future to make sure that you spend time with them. Whether it's committing to this session today or to a meeting that I've got in my calendar tomorrow, I've made a commitment in the future that I now need to honor. So I'm very protective over my time in the mornings, especially, because I know in the mornings is where I just do deep work. I love uninterrupted times in the morning. I'm a little bit weird. I actually love a 4 or 5 a.m. wake up, and I love to work all the way to 12 without interruption. So only at 12 would I want to break that creative flow that I have to check emails and whatnot. So I often time block in my mornings things that I need to do. The second thing that I do, looking back, that I wish I had known at the beginning, was around this system called Red, Blue, Black. And Red, Blue, Black is a framework. And what it represents is like black is about future money tomorrow. Let's say like strategy, future thinking. Blue is about money today. It's like revenue that I'm generating from products today that I'm selling. And red is all about my costs, like my infrastructure stuff, like HR, calendar management and whatnot. And Red, Blue, Black really helped me with prioritizing my calendar and looking at how much time am I spending in the red, how much time am I spending in the blue, and how much time am I spending in the black. And most entrepreneurs in the beginning are spending far too much time on the red, the business support stuff, the scheduling, the managing your emails, right? When really we need to be focused on spending as much time as we can in the blue to generate the income to get sustainable, and in the black to think about the income that we can generate tomorrow, which is like business development, right? So that's a framework that I use today that has been super helpful, that I just didn't know at the beginning as well. And the third one is I've got this system called a tracker, which is like my journal. And I'm a bit geeky because I use Notion as almost like my journaling app. It's like a Google Analytics for myself. So it allows me to stay track of like different memories and moments and things that I go through. So today someone gave me feedback on a LinkedIn post and they said, Andy, what you put down today was incredible. It really spoke to me. This is like legacy. I know that I'm going to forget. I can't rely on my memory alone to remember that. So I take a screenshot and I put that into my Notion and I capture it as community and a win. So I do that with everything that I'm working on. It could be with like spirituality. It could be with my mental health. It could be with physical health, with my marriage, with my family, with my friends, my hobbies. I just capture it in my Notion, and it's almost like keeping track of my curiosity. And when I look back over time, every 6 months, it's always really interesting when I connect the dots and I think about what gives me energy versus what drains my energy. How do I optimize and do more of what I love and reduce the things that really drain energy from me? And I know it's a bit geeky, but that's just the way my mind works.
Oh, I love that. I don't think that's geeky. I think that's like actually sensible and like very reflective of your level of self-awareness, because you're just admitting the fact that I will not remember this, instead of lying to myself and pretending I'm going to remember this amazing piece of feedback. Let me just screenshot it so I know where to find it when I come back to it. I really like that. And I also like that reminder of, again, building on self-awareness. You are productive in the morning, so preserve the morning as your time to use as you see fit. Don't give that time away for events or calls. If you're really productive, then use your most productive time for your work and your projects. And then that final one around the color system. I'd never heard that, red, black, blue, but it's so smart. And yeah, sorry.
I'll send the link in the chat.
Yeah, please do. But the reason I like that is because I often get in debates with people about inbox zero, because I think that inbox zero is a false economy. The idea of like spending how long to get your inbox sorted, like, do you know how messy my inbox is? Like, y'all don't even want to see my inbox, but you know what? If someone really wants to email you, they'll email you again. So I'm the kind of person, I have hundreds of unread emails, and like, yes, sometimes I do miss client stuff, which is quite sad, but they're still working with me. So far it's fine. And I'm just honest with people. I'm just like, inbox zero is a false economy. I don't believe in spending hours sorting my inbox. I'd rather spend hours talking to my team or building something. So I like that. Lots of helpful tools. I'm putting Michael on the hot seat now. What are the looking at day, thousand a pocket versus all the way back to 8 years ago, day one? What are the habits or just like, operational strategies that you wish you were doing sooner or had started?
Just on inbox zero, definitely agree on that. I think that's complete propaganda. And I think it's one of those things where your email is somebody else's agenda for your day. So like, if you are prioritizing tackling your inbox, it's like, what about what you intended for that day, basically? So a lot of the stuff I would say Andy touched upon, definitely, like it all comes from like, there's a collection of wisdom and it all comes from different sources. So I used to read a lot of Paul Graham essays. He's like a founder of Y Combinator, and he would talk about maker versus manager schedule. So in the morning, have your maker schedule. So a lot of us get into entrepreneurship because we're creative types, we want to build something. Maybe you're a coder, maybe you're a designer, maybe you're whatever. So have that schedule in the morning where you're doing that kind of deep work, that creative work. And then maybe like from 2 p.m. onwards, you've got manager schedule where it's like admin, email, blah, blah, blah. And then even break up your week in that way as well. So I mentioned on our last call on Sundays, Sunday evening, I like to just plan out my week basically. And I use a notepad, good old fashioned pen and paper. I feel like we rely too much on technology, and there's something about having that tangible pen and paper. Your ideas flow better. All of a sudden things start coming to you that you just didn't think, even if you haven't got your laptop anywhere near you. I definitely recommend that. And then in terms of other habits that I wish that I implemented operationally, I wish I hired sooner, just like straight up. Like I was way too tight, way too cheap when it came to that. And then when you do hire, that's a whole whole world in of itself. But yeah, don't be too cheap. The like talent really does exist. I was one of those believers that thought that like everyone is equally as good at certain things. And it's just not the case. I'm not good at certain things. And when you look for a writer, for example, there are some people who are just amazing and they will show you something that you've never seen before, basically. And then if you are going to hire, set a paid task. Now, as founders, we're cheap. We don't want to spend money. But the only way to know if someone can do the work is by getting them to do the work. So if I'm hiring a writer for my blog, I will say, here's an article I want you to write. Here's the fee. I want it done within this time frame. And if the work is great, then I at least know they can do the work. I've been burnt before in the initial stages where like I didn't do stuff like that, and it just didn't work out. And then the other thing is, I guess this is kind of mindset, but I will say your success will come down to how many uncomfortable conversations you're willing to have. And that can be a frank conversation with a co-founder saying, bruh, this ain't working. We're not on the same page here. It can be with a customer. We need to up the price. This is, like if they're saying yes too quickly, then you're too cheap. So frank and uncomfortable conversations is definitely a habit that you've got to get used to doing. So yeah, I wish I had frank and uncomfortable conversations more, and make a manager prioritize your time and use a notepad.
Use your notepad. So many great gems. I'm also taking notes, by the way. I'm just like, I'm 7 years into this journey. I'm still learning. So I like that. Thank you. I'm going to come to Ash just to see if there are any like essential like habits that he's now using on a regular basis that he didn't use before. And I would just say one of the ones for me has been to like listen to my gut sooner and like act on it sooner. I don't know. I just feel like when I first started entrepreneurship, I just really struggled with like following my intuition, because I just was like, well, I'm an early stage founder. I don't know. But you know, sometimes you do a sales call with a client and they're already quite aggressive and challenging and difficult. And it took me such a long time to realize that, like that Maya Angelou quote, you know, when someone shows you who they are the first time, believe them. It took me so long to realize like, oh, if this person's already like pushing back on everything, like being really demanding, they're probably always going to be like that. They're going to be like that throughout the whole partnership. Like if this is how they are in the sales process, that's how they're going to be. But I lacked the confidence to like trust that instinct and trust that gut. And now it's something that I just really, really lean into. And it's funny because it's become a saying in my team where we're just like, oh, is this a red flag? Do we have a red flag feeling about this client? Or do we have a red flag feeling about this supplier, about this freelancer? And it's just become a really powerful way for us to acknowledge the fact that, you know, sometimes these instincts, these gut feelings are subconscious, like patterns that you've observed or something else. Ash, do you have any to add? And then I'll come to Olivia's question in the chat.
Yeah, just on that, really, on that gut feel thing. So I've been thinking about this and the same, like we're all just lifelong learners, right? No one's ever right always. So I think that's probably the first point, which is that you should just do you. Like you're getting so many tips here from these guys and Abba, and all of these tips are amazing. But the reality is that, you know, not all of it's going to work for you because there's different personality types and everybody's on a certain type of spectrum in different places and different ways and different walks of life. And so, you know, I've read Do the One Thing, and that sounds amazing and it sounds like it's super practical, but for me as someone who's neurodivergent, actually doesn't make sense because I get really bored if I do just one thing. There is a balance. If I do 12, that doesn't make sense because my time's going to be screwed, and I've learned that the hard way. So it's finding that right balance and what works for me and then committing to it, and also knowing it's probably not going to be the way that I'm going to work forever, but maybe it'll work for 6 weeks, maybe it'll work for 6 months, maybe it'll work for 6 years. But it's just about committing and listening to that. And I actually came up with a super practical tip. Well, I didn't come up with it. I got a super practical tip from somebody recently where we were talking about how you can make better decisions around your intuition. Like every time I've gone against my intuition, it was probably the wrong thing to do, and every time I've gone with it, it was probably the right thing to do. So how can I do it more? And I was challenged by them to flip a coin, and that sounded really, and I might have mentioned this in the first session, but it sounded really throwaway. I was like, I'm not taking my life on 50-50 bets. And they were like, no, it's not about the result of the coin, it's about how you feel about the result of the coin. That will tell you which way you actually really wanted to go. And I've done it a couple of times since, and it was actually kind of weird, even not having to flip a coin, but just thinking what would happen if it landed on tails, how would I feel and what would I do then, actually really helped. So that's that. And then the final piece that I'll kind of bring up on here is that if we're talking about practicalities in running any business, I think there's so much noise. You know, Michael said it as well, and there's so much noise, there's so much propaganda around like what you should be doing, what you could be doing, how you could be doing it, that we can sweat so much of the small stuff that we forget to sell stuff. And that's what we need to do, really. A business is just sell something, ideally for more than it costs to make it, and just do that constantly and repeat it. Like, obviously, do it healthily, do it in the right way, but don't forget to sell stuff. That's my ultimate practical tip.
We are but humble salespeople in this game of entrepreneurship. Thank you for the reminder. I love that. Okay, Michael, Olivia's got a question. How do you have those difficult conversations around pricing changes, especially if you have them with early adopters who you feel a sense of loyalty to? Olivia, do you want to just like hop off of mute and just give a bit of context for Sistren and like what you're building and stuff? Is Olivia, wait, have I just put her on the spot and then copy the line? Where is she? Olivia.
I think she said that she's on the call. She's on the commute, I think, right?
Oh, okay, so she can't speak. Okay,
yeah,
cool.
yeah. So I can answer it.
Yeah.
I'll drop a link to the community just so you have context. But yeah, similar in space to you. So building a community and yeah.
So it's difficult. So what we did is we always kind of honored our previous customers' pricing and just grandfathered more expensive pricing to new customers. That's easy for us because there's not like a marginal cost per like serving customer. So we were selling unlimited job posts and like having a company page. So it wasn't necessarily stuff that required us to do physical work every time we sold a product. If you do have a product like that, yeah, you're just gonna have to have that conversation and be like, sorry guys, like this ain't working. Like we need to up our price because our cost structure has changed. Obviously, do it in a very polite and practical way where you're explaining why you have to do this and how it helps them, like why you're doing this for their benefit, so that you can sustainably give them the service that they've got used to. But then also, you can't be afraid to lose a customer. If you double your price and you keep half of your customers, you're still making the same amount of money, but you're doing half the work. So like sometimes we're just afraid to lose every customer because we're desperate as young entrepreneurs in the beginning. Like, I can't keep them. Like, nah, like if you are bringing in the same amount of revenue and you're doing less work, to me, that's a win, because now you have the time and breathing space to strategize onto new frontiers. So yeah, one, try to grandfather people in if there's no marginal cost to each new customer. If there is, explain it to them. And if they want to go, let them go, because it's not going to work out anyway. You're going to give them a crap product. If you're selling a 2K product, that if you're selling a 100K product for 2K, they're going to leave because you're like, yeah, we can't do this for you anymore. So there's that.
Andy.
Yeah, I just want to riff on what Michael said, because I think context really matters when increasing pricing. And I'll give like two recent examples of the Angel Investing School. Last year, August, we launched a membership product. And for everyone that was on our mailing list for that membership product, we promised them a founding member offer. So with the founding member offer, they got let's say a year's membership for 300 and something pounds. After that offer ended after 7 days, everyone from then on had £400 onwards. If you're on that founding offer and you cancel your membership and you came back 6 weeks later, you no longer have that founding offer anymore. Because we communicated that proactively up front into this whole thing and this campaign around founding offer, customers were totally like at peace with it. With the actual live course, we started off our pricing about 2.5 years ago at £300. And today the pricing is at £700. The course has been improved. The course is actually more condensed and shorter, but the course is a lot more valuable. And what we noticed is that we benchmarked against a lot of competitors, mainly in the US, and we're underpricing ourselves. And as a consequence, our actual target audience who we're trying to target at didn't believe that it was valuable because it was too cheap. So when we repriced it to £700, it actually attracted more of our audience, because if you think about it, these are people that are aspiring to make angel investments and invest thousands of pounds. So to learn that process, to pay £700 or £1,000 is actually aligned, given the amount that they're going to invest is actually a small portion of what they're going to invest. Whereas if the course was £300, they could question actually the quality of the course. So it's really interesting gaining feedback from customers around that. And we've always had one or two people ask, like, oh, I wanted to join the course. We had two people like, I wanted to join the course last year and it was 300 and I didn't. And now it's gone up to 700. I said, yeah, you're correct. There was a window of opportunity to join and you didn't join at that time. And now the price is higher. I understand if it's not for you. I understand if it's too expensive. Here are these other products that we have that we may be more suited to your budget.
Fantastic. That's so brilliant. Yesterday's price is not today's price. Yes, I like that. I want to say something as well around what are you willing to sacrifice as a founder and what are you willing to fight for? And I think for me, I've always been the kind of person where it's like, I'm willing to sacrifice cheap customers because I want to fight for profit. I've worked at companies like Amazon where there's no margin at all. I worked at Groupon, where we're basically like being investigated by the Office of Fair Trading all the time because we're basically some kind of pyramid scheme. We still IPO'd, but whatever. And I just think when I started building a business with my own money, not VC's money, like my cash, I was like, I want to position myself in a, you know, really diluted and competitive space where I'm almost seen as like a premium product. And I still have sales conversations where people say, you're really expensive. And I say, I know, but I'm trying to be reassuringly expensive as opposed to fighting for the bottom of the pile and being really cheap. And like Andy just said, I often say to people, go work with all these other amazing companies who are a lot less, you know, expensive than me, or go for our e-learning. And I do think it's something that's easier when you're, you know, more established. But if you are a services business, which a lot of you are, like offering your time, offering your team's time in exchange for value, be very careful, because it's always easy to start high and offer discount. It's very hard if you start very low to suddenly start bringing your prices up. I mean, of course, there are these excellent campaigns, which like Andy's giving examples of how you can execute. But yeah, just be mindful. It's always better to just start really high and say discounts are available on XYZ criteria. Okay, so my next question, and founders, please feel free to also share your own. This is specifically around tools. So Andy's already mentioned Notion, but I'm just curious, like any other like software or maybe even like physical tools are in your wheelhouse that you're relying on quite heavily, that you didn't really used to use before. I'm actually going to start. I know this sounds like really silly, but it took me a really long time to realize that things that are important for you to stay productive, so for example, like laptop charger, headphones, notepad, pen, things where you can just work from anywhere, should be in every bag you have so that you don't waste time looking for them. I know this sounds so dumb, but it literally took me so long to do that. So because we're all women founders in this cohort, okay, guys? I don't know if you knew that. 9 women founders in the mix. We change bags a lot. Okay, like sometimes I use my big bag, then I use my tote bag, then I use my small backpack, blah, blah, blah. And I cannot tell you how annoying it is when you're rushing to a meeting or rushing to an event to be like, oh, where's my AirPods? Where's my headphones? Where's my notebook? Where's my pen? Where's my business cards? Where's my this? Where's my flyers? I have 6 pairs of headphones, 6 notebooks, like blah, 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 like mouses, iPhone, whatever, MacBook chargers. I even have 2 laptops. I have a big one and a small one. Because I just realized I don't want to waste time looking for the things I need to keep my business going and to stay productive. So in every bag I own is like a mini little productivity kit. I can just grab it and go, and I can work from anywhere. So that's my tip for the tools that I have. What's yours, Andy?
You know, as you were speaking, I naturally thought one of the things that's been really helpful is just having like no phone time. You know, your phone could be so distracting. You pick up
and addictive.
Oh my gosh, you pick up Instagram or TikTok and suddenly you're into this 1-hour feed that was meant to be a 5-minute check, and now I haven't done the thing that I actually wanted to do, and now I'm behind my schedule. Like, so what I've learned is like I need to get through what I need to get through before I get into the secondary stuff, which is stuff like the phone. So when I'm at work, I purposely like put my phone away for 2 or 3 hours, and I know what everyone says. But if there's an emergency, I will check in 2 or 3 hours, and I just pray that there is an emergency. And I would say 99% of the times there has never been an emergency. So I think that's a really helpful one, just for people to get back to being able to focus, do deep work, and concentrate. I think it can be such a destructive part of your day when you work for 10 minutes, then phone, 5 minutes, then phone. And when you add it up, you're probably on your phone more than you worked that day. And I feel similarly with meetings. Like, I feel like be intentional around the blocks of time when you want to have 2 or 3 meetings in a row, and just have blocks of hours where it's uninterrupted and you can just get on with work. And I think the physical space can influence that. So sometimes Huckletree was mentioned, Huckletree Shoreditch. Sometimes it's a great hideout for me because no one is there that I know, so I can get on with it. Whereas when I go to a VC's office, they're having conversations with me for 2 hours. For them, it's like, yeah, I want to catch up. It's good. I haven't seen you for ages. For me, it's actually, I hate it because now you've pushed 2 hours of work into my evening that I need to take basically either away from my sleep or my family. So I think that context really matters, and the physical environment can influence like how you work as well.
I like that. I like also, again, bringing that sort of self-awareness into it and just being like, okay, what do I actually need to be productive? It might not be what, I don't know, Jeff Bezos does or whatever it does, like knowing myself, being honest with myself, what is going to help me ship this today or launch this today? And if it's hiding your phone, it's hiding your phone. Like you, my phone stays on Do Not Disturb until 1 p.m. And it's been like that for like 7 years. Like everyone's always like, what about emergencies? I'm like, they'll find me. I don't know. But I also, I'm not superhuman. I'm easily distracted. So I just have to remove all distractions. It's the same kind of thing with like food. Like if I buy Haagen-Dazs, I'll eat the whole tub. So I just don't buy Haagen-Dazs. I'm just being honest. I'm just being honest with myself. Michael, what are your tools, your go-tos?
So like it's obviously the trendy thing right now, but tactically I'm heavy into AI right now. And I know everyone's gonna probably roll their eyes, but I shit you not, like we were basically paying an editor for our podcast takers to like edit clips, and then I discovered a tool that basically did it for you. And obviously not only did it considerably save our budget, considerably save our time and efficiency. So try to be on the lookout for tools that can actually automate your workflow. So I'm gonna be like super tactical. Obviously Notion, using AI tools, there's API for automations. Obviously we use Slack. And then for Slack, what I did is I created a channel called Mandatory and Suggestions for my team because it was getting confusing. Because sometimes I'll be up there saying, oh, why don't we try this? And why don't we try that? And then I basically created 2 channels. One where it's just, I'm just suggesting it, try it if you want, just an idea. And then there's the other stuff where I'm like, mandatory, we really need to do this. Like, let's get a grip on it. And then besides that, the tool of, on a more esoteric level, tool of the gym, tool of long walks, like things like that. I read a quote about how you should never trust a thought that you have indoors. And obviously it's exaggeration, but sometimes when you're at home, just sat down, just like in your dark room, the thoughts that you have, they're not from your higher self. When you go for a walk and you feel the clear air and you get into nature and you de-stress, and all of a sudden you're like, yeah, like maybe this can work. Like maybe we can do this. Yeah, don't underestimate. Then I read the last call we did was on mindset, but I can actually recollect times when I was like, there's competition entering my space, talking to my girlfriend, I think I need to shut down. And she was like, what are you talking about? Went for a walk, came back, clarity, and I probably made hundreds of thousands of dollars from that time when I was like, we need to shut down to today, because I was like, let me just go for a walk and not make a rash decision because this VC firm has funded a competitor, they're going to blow us out of the water. So yeah, bunch of stuff from the tactical AI, Notion, Slack, to go for long walks, exercise, clear your head. Don't trust your thoughts straight away.
That's really lovely. I actually wanted to like talk a little bit about this like habit of sort of like anchoring your day or you know, giving focus to your day, because I see this theme emerging in everything that's been shared so far. So building on this like self-awareness that you have and building on this like mindset of like, okay, I want to be productive, I want to be realistic with what I'm dealing with, i.e. myself, how I can be most productive. Each of us have this sort of routine or habit that's very built around, how do I protect the time where I'm really productive? How do I also protect like my health and my well-being? And I think it's like probably a really valuable exercise for all the founders in the room to start thinking about what that like ideal day looks like. And maybe one version of that ideal day is like, what does an ideal day where you have a lot of meetings, what does that look like? And then what does an ideal day where you're just doing deep work and you have no meetings, what does that look like? And you know, on that point of getting outside, I got really into like Huberman Labs over New Year's when I was trying to be like new year, new me. And he talked about some research around getting outdoors in the first hour of waking up. And if you can, within the first hour of waking up, get real, actual light, not phone light, not whatever, or at the worst case, like a sad lamp UV light, your mental health is really improved for the day because it like really helps with your like dopamine and endorphins. And I will say the days that I do that, where I'm like, okay, I'm going to go outside. Sometimes I literally just walk the block around my flat and back. Like I'm gone for only 10 minutes. I do feel a lot better. So yeah, maybe build in a habit of just going outside, even if you are working from home or you're going to be in meetings. Curious to get your thoughts on Nikki's question. Do you think it's reasonable to have strict no meeting days like Mondays and Fridays? And I answered very honestly here, because when I came back from the Philippines, where my family are, I spent Christmas there. I was like, I said to my team, we're doing no meetings Wednesdays. we're going to have a Wednesday, no meetings, no team meetings, no calls. We're just going to like focus on our project work. But we're a services business, right? So I'm dealing with sales calls all the time. Sophia's dealing with like operation stuff all the time. When's our next workshop, blah, blah, blah. If a client says, I want to talk to you on Wednesday, and Wednesday's the only day I'm free because I don't work on Thursdays and Fridays, or I do the school or whenever, I'm not going to say, oh, well, I'll be available in Wednesday's time when I have my one non-work meeting day Wednesday. It's just not possible. So I think it's a luxury and a privilege that you can enjoy when you have reached a level of success where you don't need to answer to your clients' biddings. I'm not there yet. Maybe I will be soon, hopefully. I definitely tried to be a bit strategic with how my Calendly is set up, but at the end of the day, there are even times where I'm like, I'm not taking any calls on Friday. But if my client on Thursday wants to reschedule to Friday, I'm not going to say no, am I? So I just feel like it's a luxury to be able to say no to calls, but that's my experience. I don't know, Andy, Michael, what do you say?
I agree with what you said fully. It's a guiding principle, and I think with guiding principles, we need to obviously like understand where we need to be flexible around the edges. Like one of my guiding principles is called 2 and 5, where I spend 2 evenings a week max doing things out in the world, whether it's in speaking at an event or attending an event, and the rest of the evenings I'm at home with the family. Even though that's a rule, I sometimes have to violate that rule. Like I'm going to Dubai in October for a startup conference. It's from Sunday to Wednesday. That violates the rule, but it's within reason, isn't it? And I think that's what you need to be like pragmatic. And if you're violating the rule every single week, then it probably shouldn't be a rule and the rule needs to be adapted. But if it's something that you can use as a guide just to keep you on track, I think that's for a lot of things actually in building a business where actually these things are guides, but it doesn't mean that you have to stick to it. And I love what Ash shared at the beginning around like, this works for Andy, or this works for Michael, this works for me. It doesn't necessarily work for you, and you need to figure out what's going to work for you. There's no off-the-shelf playbook, and I've got all the answers. You're going to have to figure out what works for you. But when you hear the wisdom of others, you take the bits that you want to test out and experiment, and then you'll figure out what works for you.
That's really helpful. Thank you. Michael, your thoughts? You doing a 3-day week out there? Meetings? No meetings day?
I think it depends what kind of business you have as well. So, for example, at one point, my company, we were just selling just through software. It was all just like job postings. You'd go in, do a Stripe checkout, and you pay. And in that kind of business where we didn't really speak to customers that much via meetings, we could do something like that where we didn't have a day where we could have a day where there was no meetings, because it was all just about building product and then helping customers self-serve. Then we switched to a model where we actually were selling high-ticket items and we needed to get the call. Then our schedule was no longer up to us. It's up to the customer, really and truly. And I think what you lot said about having it as an aspiration and as like a North Star, but be pragmatic. And if you need to break that rule, break the rule.
Amazing. So we talked a little bit about like false economies. Well, I did. I said that inbox zero is BS. But I'm just curious, what are the other things that you see founders wasting time on, or maybe things that you are also wasting time on at the beginning that you're not wasting time on now? And I will share my own personal reflection. At the beginning, I went to so many events because I wanted to network. I was like, you got to be at the events to meet the investors and like the founders and this, that, and the other. And I don't regret going to any of those events, but I feel like, especially because I'm an extroverted person, it was easy for me to convince myself being at the events was working on my business, when really being at the events was working on my network. And that is a valid part of the business, but it's not building stuff, it's not testing stuff, it's not interviewing your customers or anything like that. So I kind of think I should have learned a bit earlier how to get the most out of events, and then also like how to also just build my network in a more scalable or less time intensive way. So for example, getting into content creation earlier, getting into that thought leadership on LinkedIn and Instagram earlier, because actually in the end, I've probably gained more lucrative business leads from the social media networking I've done than the IRL networking I've done. So that's something I'm just kind of reflecting on, but would love to hear from Andy, Michael, Ash. What are some of those early, I guess, almost traps that early stage founders get caught into? Like, oh, I'm going to do this because this is really important, but actually it's not a good use of your time. Okay, Ash, you've raised your hand, so I'll come to you first.
Trying to play by the rules for a change. I think the thing that I've fallen foul to, and I see people do all the time, is not learning enough about, and you mentioned them on the call already, dopamine and the chemicals that kind of just get us going, right? And those are the things that I've been an addict for previously. And the reason I refer to those is because they manifest in business in so many different ways, which is going to events, and in my case, helping people. I'm a people pleaser. It makes me feel really good to help people, to connect people, to do all of that. And that's amazing, but I can't pay my rent with social currency, which makes you, after 10 years of doing it, be renowned as a really helpful person. But you end up resenting it because you're like, well, I'm really helpful, but I'm also more broke than everybody else, and that's not a good feeling. So that's something that you end up resenting, and because you're chasing that dopamine high. But it also can manifest in different ways that I see with really early stage founders, and I don't mean this in a patronizing way, but there are so many people that have started a business just so they can change their Instagram bio, for example. And just because it says entrepreneur, you already feel like you're getting there, and because you feel like you're getting there, it kind of alleviates the pressure to go and do actual stuff. And so the dopamine reward was there, but the financial one isn't. And in a year's time, you're like, hey, I wanted to build a business, I never did. So I think the guiding principle, to use Andy's words on that, is just to learn a little bit about, what is it that really drives me? I think people are driven by either money, impact, or narcissism. And those three things, are all fine, right? Narcissism has a negative rep, but it's just a thing. Ego is a thing. We need to just be powerful by understanding which one of those or which two of those actually drive us, and what that really means for our future. If I want a Lamborghini, but I'm actually driven by ego, then that's not going to happen, because I'm not going to make the money happen to get the car in the first place, if that makes sense. So yeah, just understanding, dopamine, and it's the reason why I pick these things up and spend hours on it, just like Andy said. So yeah.
Yeah, that's really good. I like that reflection. Like, what am I doing this for? Why am I doing this? I really like that. Andy, keen to hear from you. What do you think are some of these habits or actions that early stage founders are spending a lot of time on? Actually, they're not necessarily a good use of time.
Yeah, firstly, I was just looking at Nikki smiling. I haven't even said anything yet. But there's three things that I do want to mention. One is focusing on investors over customers. Makes no sense to me. You've got 12 months of runway left in the bank, and you're choosing to spend that with investors who are making you feel demoralized, who are draining your energy, and who are saying no to you and making you have that imposter syndrome around whether you should be doing this or not. Instead of spending time with your customers and understanding the problems that they're facing, the context that they're facing those problems, and the different ways that you can solve those problems, because you recognize there's many streams that lead to the ocean. That's the first one. And I see startups closing down even today because they spent way too much time with investors rather than customers and getting to profitability. The second is just really understanding how your business works. Like, we talk about this concept called unit economics, which is like, actually, how profitable is each unit of this product or service that I'm selling? And 90% of founders don't know what that is for their business. It's worthwhile spending time to learn about the unit economics of your business, so you understand the pricing that should be attached to that product, the go-to-market strategy, exactly how many units you need to sell. Like, that is a driving factor behind how you build your business, and even the business model that you choose for your business. The final thing that I'll touch on is vanity metrics and not knowing your North Star. When you know your North Star, it helps you to laser focus. The reason that I'm having this meeting is because it's mission critical and can open this door to this opportunity that matters for my business, versus just this opportunistic conversation. And I think a big mistake that a lot of founders make, even when having those conversations, is you need to be interested rather than interesting. People leave breadcrumbs and clues if you can get them talking and you just listen to them and stroke their ego a little bit. You don't go in selling. You go in understanding their context, the problems that they're facing, and then it opens up opportunities. And I'll give you a recent example. I've got someone who's a member of our membership, and he's a head coach at a Premier League club. And I just had a catch up with him. I brought him into a startup event. And I started sensing that he didn't understand some of the language that was being used, because we've got this weird language in the startup world, which is really stupid, really. All these acronyms and stuff, which really means simple things: NDAs, MVPs, traction. It means really simple things when you explain it. And I noticed that he struggled with a lot of some of the language. And then he pulled me aside and said, Andy, why do you think that only at 38 years old, I discovered like angel investing? I had no clue about this world of entrepreneurship and angel investing is a problem. I wish someone like you would actually speak to the Premier League or to some of our clubs so we can get 20 of the youth players on, because when they get a pro contract, 95% of them don't end up becoming professional footballers. I didn't have to sell anything for him to share with me his ideas and his feedback, and he's my route into those kind of clubs. So that's a great example of where you're just interested in someone and it leads to that intrigue and that curiosity and then that opportunity. And sometimes it doesn't, but it's about being interested in them rather than hard selling. And the same is true for like speaking engagements. I had people that have followed my content on LinkedIn for 12 months and then they reached out and they're like, oh, can I book you for this thing? And I want to pay you to speak at this thing. Like, how did you even find out about me? I've been following you for 12 months. They've never engaged, they've never liked, they've never commented, but they've been watching. I think that's a lesson even about content, is that you never know who's really watching and paying attention to what you're doing. But like Abba said, like, it could be the most valuable people and sales leads that you get from just putting yourself out there in a consistent way and putting quality out there.
Yeah, I love that. Lots of gems. I took some
Mad
notes.
gems.
Michael.
There's a lot of great stuff that's been said. I think one mindset you have to get rid of is perfectionism. In entrepreneurship, and definitely recommend everyone read obviously like Lean Startup and then even Lean Analytics, because the person who wins in entrepreneurship is the person who learns the quickest. So you could be two founders in a similar vertical in a new space that no one really knows about. Whoever learns whatever the customer wants quickest is going to win. So that requires you not being a perfectionist. It means getting off a landing page that's not going to be perfect, using no-code tools maybe instead of building a custom app or getting a designer to make it perfect. You have to get rid of like that need to be like, oh, every pixel has to be right and blah, blah, blah. Lose that. And I always say to my team, it's good enough. And then that infuriates them, because they probably come from a mindset where you go through school and academia and then you get a graduate job and everything has to be like box ticks and great. And I'm like, no, we're in a startup world. It's a race. It's a race for survival. We need to be quicker, basically. So get rid of perfectionism. Then what Andy said about vanity metrics, I think Drake said it best way. He said, don't worry about your followers, you can get your dollars up. And a lot of us are out here just worried about clout, things that don't matter. Like, it doesn't, like, unless you're building a media company, your followers don't matter, pretty much. I mean, you need to do content for like, maybe to build traction and to get some eyeballs on what you're doing. And maybe that might be your sales funnel. If it is your sales funnel, go do your thing. But the reality is you need to get your first dollar in before you speak to an investor, before you start posting stuff on social media, changing your Instagram bio, all of that stuff. Other thing that doesn't matter, media, press releases, press attention. I've been in TechCrunch, didn't do nothing. Like, no money came from tech being in TechCrunch. I've won awards, didn't do nothing, didn't make me any money. And I think we have a culture in the UK where we're giving out, and this is gonna sound like I'm hating, but I've won awards. When we win awards, and then I'll chat to that founder and like, yeah, this year's revenue is 10K. And I'm like, but you just won an award for like best founder of the year. And it's like, yeah, but it's all a mirage. Like, I'm gonna keep it real. And then you've got other founders watching that, thinking, oh my God, I'm missing out. I'm not doing well. Like, I'm not at Guala. I'm not, like, it doesn't matter. Like, let's keep it real. Like, and you compare that to the US. If you win an award in the US, you're basically doing millions of dollars in revenue, most likely. So we need to kind of get out of this culture of awards and media attention and Instagram followers, because like the last 2 years, unfortunately, has been a bloodbath when it comes to like, especially in like entrepreneurship. There's been a lot of companies that were like really lauded and held up. And I'm not saying it's anyone's fault. It happens. Business is very, very difficult. But like, maybe the emphasis should be more on, let's just get our head down, figure out, can we survive? Is this profitable? What are the unit economics? Like, do we need investors? Can we do this without investors? Because if we wait for the investors to save us, when it comes time to survival mode, and they're like, well, we're not really feeling the space anymore, investing in black people ain't cool no more. So then you're out of business. Like, anyway, I said a lot there, and maybe I went on too long. I said a few things I shouldn't have said, but hopefully that's insightful to some people.
No, I think that's really helpful. And like, honestly, we could probably do like a whole new session just on like vanity metrics and what to measure and how to understand your growth engine better. Lean Startup is a great book for starting to understand growth engines, but you could also just Google Amazon flywheel and see different versions of people's flywheels. But yeah, understanding like the mechanics that bring you customers and bring you more potential customers and whatever magic happens to turn potential customers into actual sales is so key. So I think you said a lot of really good things. And yeah, to your point, Michael, I guess it's about knowing for yourself in your business what numbers really matter, and not getting caught up in the hype of winning awards, getting founders. Oh, never made Forbes 30 under 30. It's okay. I'm doing fine. So my question next comes from Gabrielle, actually. And she's just wondering, I'll start with you, Michael, but I'm sure the other founders on stage have some thoughts too. Because you talked about new competitors with funding entering your space, what additional strategies, principles have helped you and your team address this fact? So you're bootstrapping, you're competing for the same customers with VC-backed companies. How do you stay in the game with that?
Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, so there was this is corny in it to quote this, but there was a Sun Tzu quote about how like if you wait by the river long enough, the bodies of your enemies will float by, just if you stay alive for long enough. So the key in entrepreneurship is stay alive, like be as profitable as you can. And the reality is most VC companies, what they do is they raise 2 million or 1 million or whatever, they're not profitable and they burn through that capital. Then if the space isn't hot no more and they don't get a re-up with new investment, they're out of business. So we actually just made sure that we stayed the course, made sure that we were profitable, and have been able to kind of just outlast them in that way. And the other thing is, if there are people in your space with VC dollars, it means that there's something there. That's also almost a kind of reverse psychology. It almost validates what you're doing. It means that there's gold at the end of that rainbow. So keep going. It also means these might be people that might potentially acquire you down the line if you're doing something that is worthwhile and you are a nuisance to them. So it doesn't necessarily mean it's the end of the world. I think it's difficult though if you're in a space where they are going to just burn money on customer acquisition and kind of outdo you. That can happen. It's quite rare to happen in like if something's super hot, like I don't know, Uber, like that Uber when Uber blew up marketplaces and things like that. It can be quite difficult if it's something super hot. But more times than not, that's not the case. And just outlast them. Stay profitable, stay lean, keep a cash reserve, and you will probably out-survive them because most of them don't know what they're doing, I'll be honest with you.
Yeah, I got stressed during 2020 because everyone became a D&I company, but half of them don't exist anymore and we're still here.
Exactly, there you go.
Andy.
I just had to riff off my brother because Michael mentioned so much that makes sense there. Like, yes, it validates the market, but a lot of founders don't know how to be capital efficient and deploy that capital in the right way to hire the right people, to work on the right features. You'll be surprised that 95% or more of a VC's portfolio is underperforming and will fail to make a return for the fund. So sometimes inheriting that growth strategy by taking on that VC funding can distract you from the path that you would have stayed the course on. And I love what Michael was describing there in terms of just playing the long game and measuring your life in decades and not days and just surviving. Because in this market that we're in now, I'm telling you, there's an unbelievable amount of startups that I'm seeing left, right, and center that haven't announced it publicly yet, but they're closing down shop. Because last year they were told by VCs to grow at all costs. This year they're being told to find that path to profitability, and they cannot do it on the current burn rate and on how much runway they have left. So they're in a really challenging position. Whereas if you're capital efficient and you have positive unit economics in this environment, you're building on strong fundamentals. And that comes actually from your competitive advantage, which is really your customers. Your competitors can't see the insights that you can see with your customer base. So you've got a unique access to this customer base, exactly how to reach them and what problems to solve for them. And that's where you'll win if you double down on that. And I think something that people treat as an intangible is actually really defensibility is your community. Your community is your moat. I've got people like Ash and Abba who've taken the angel investing school and have recommended it to others. They are my moat because that personal recommendation that comes to them will outdo and outperform a Google ad or a video that someone sees on Instagram. So actually, if the more you invest into your people, the more you support the people that you're serving, the more it feeds into a flywheel to feed into the brand that you're building or the business that you're building. So it's just a lesson kind of on like focusing a lot more on your customers over your competition, which can really distract you from your strategy.
Love that. Ash.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that, because those are the points, and not just the best points. Those are all the points, right? Like, I just wanted to add 2 examples, basically, just to put some real world spin on it. So, like, the first one being a really famous example, which is WeWork, right? Regis was around before WeWork ever started, and then WeWork comes along, gets funded, and gets funded again, and gets funded again, and gets funded again. And over the time, you know, Regis has for a long time been a profitable company with really boring workspaces that just make money. That's what they do. And then WeWork comes along, they're like, we've got beer on tap, we do cool parties, we've got famous investors, look at how amazing we are. And they get to this 42 billion, you know, bloated valuation, and they're just a quick Google away now to see what their valuation is right now, and it's, you know, floored. Regis is still around. They didn't care really. I mean, they probably cared at board level. They probably had some cool conversations, but they didn't seem to panic, and they just stayed the course, and they did exactly what Michael said. So yeah, they're still around. And there's another example that's happening right now that's live that you can kind of watch as it unfolds, which is we had a speaker at one of our events recently. It's the founder of a company called Ticket Tailor. And Ticket Tailor is basically taken on Meetup and Eventbrite. Now, Meetup charge for everyone over 100 people you have in a community, and it starts to get really expensive. Eventbrite have just started charging for some, and I swear it's an arbitrary number, like 27 people. As soon as you get 27 tickets sold in your event, it might be 25 as a round number, I don't know, but something like that, you have to start paying Eventbrite, even if it's a free event. That's going to be their massive undoing. But the only reason they're doing that is almost certainly because they've never made a profit, because they're VC backed and they've got metrics. And the point that I was going to add to everything the guys have said so far is that as soon as someone gets a VC on board or an investor on board, they've got a boss, and that boss is giving them new metrics, right? If you're still bootstrapping, you're the boss, your customer's the boss, but you're still the boss, right? You get to decide where you're going and what your strategy is. And Ticket Tailor are profitable. They've never taken on money. They're taking market share from Eventbrite, who are probably going to die real soon. So, well, I say real soon in the grand scheme of things. And so that's just a real world example of someone who's just like, you know, staying the course basically and not getting distracted.
Adapt and survive. There's more pressure on bootstrappers to constantly adapt and survive in a way that there isn't for people with crazy runway. I laugh sometimes when I go for dinner with my founder friends who have raised, you know, 7 figures and like haven't sold anything, and I just think, God, what I could do if I had $1 million to play with. But anywho, as we're coming to the final few minutes, oh, here we go. What should we consider when deciding whether to apply for funding versus bootstrap? We've only got a minute for this answer, so I'm going to pass it to Andy.
Let's mention one thing each, because I feel like the others have something to say as well.
Yeah, cool. Let's all finish with one thing each before we wrap up. So what to consider when applying for funding versus
with the end in mind, what type of business are you trying to build, and what type of lifestyle are you trying to support, and that can help you decide on what's right for you.
I like that.
I'm not even going to go, because that's my...
I mean, if you're applying for funding, just know that if you get the venture capitalists invest, they want to sell the business either via IPO, take it public, or have it acquired. If this is a company that you want to keep and, you know, have as a, I hate the word, but like to fit your lifestyle, I'm not gonna say lifestyle business, but to fit your lifestyle, then don't do that basically, because they want it. They want a rocket ship. If you're not willing to do a rocket ship, and also most VC-backed companies don't work, so you are basically their lottery ticket. So if you want to take that 1 in 1,000, 1 in 10,000 risk to basically become a billionaire or nothing, then that's what you got to kind of do. But speak to Andy, because Andy knows about angel investors, and you can have angel investors who can like invest in your company, and you don't have to exit. They can be understanding. So there's learn the difference between angel investing and VC. That's another thing too. I
just want to caveat, I'm not VC. I just have to always say that when I tweet. I'm not anti-VC.
You used to be though.
I'm just transparent about the way it works.
Okay, there go you.
In a former life, he's like, don't pay me with that brush. I'm cooler than that. I'm better than that. Yeah, I just add to that as well. Like, I chose to bootstrap because no one wanted to invest in me. And then I just, to Andy's point earlier, was spending so much time talking to investors that the actual community that I'd built was suffering. So I just had to go back into building, and I haven't looked back since. But yeah, there's a big jump from bootstrapping to venture capital funding, a lot of different steps in between. Check out Esme, and she does a lot of really interesting stuff. Esme from like YSYS, Ada Ventures community. I don't know, she's in the mix in the startup scene. I think she writes for Sifted sometimes too. Esme Verity, that's it. And she does some really interesting stuff around alternate funding models for founders. So there's a lot between bootstrapping and VC, and you owe it to yourself and your future team to explore it. Thank you, Ash, Andy, Michael, so many great gems. Looking forward to seeing you on Friday. Awesome. Take care, everyone. See you on Friday.
See you guys later.
Bye. Bye. Bye.